Hey all, thanks very much for joining this week's episode of the iPPi Insider. We are joined by CEO of For Property, John Kennedy, Managing Director of Dataships, Ian Madigan, and we are hosted by the voice of Irish rugby, in my own opinion, Michael Corcoran. So thanks a million lads for jumping on. I really appreciate it. We had good value from the last one with Johnny Horgan from PitX1, and during these times, it's good to gather around. So just a bit of background: John is CEO of For Property Group with over 25 years experience in design, technology, specialising in real estate, publishing and financial systems. Ian Madigan, professional rugby player with Ulster Rugby, 31 times for Ireland, and having played in France and England, he now returns back to the island, playing up in Ulster. So Ian, you're very welcome. Hand it over to you, Michael, where we're going to go through all things open data. Thanks a million.
All right. Thanks, Kenneth, and thanks everybody for logging on. Hope you're enjoying the weather. Well, sorry, hope the weather's good wherever you are. Sorry, I apologize. The sun is shining where I am, so no clouds in my world today. So thanks indeed. John, there's no pressure on you. Johnny Horgan was very entertaining the last day, so compare and contrast. We'll do that in the review a little bit later on. But could I suppose start with you, if you don't mind? As Kenneth was saying, you're the CEO of For Property. We've just been talking before we even came on just about data, open data, and what you can do with it. And just give me a bit of background, if you don't mind, about your own scenario and your own thoughts on the subject.
Yeah, so open data, which is basically publishing or gathering data internal to either an organization or a public body, and then sharing of that data, and that's what makes it open. So when open data can be very, very small snippets of information that could be used, such as I described earlier on, in terms of the waiting room in hospitals, emergency rooms. If you're seeing that there is a big 4-hour wait and there's 50 people queued up there, that would be useful in terms of, maybe which emergency room you might go to, or whether, you're thinking, I shouldn't go at all. I'm not, I'm just going to be sitting there and it's not important. Not that anybody who has an emergency shouldn't go, but the point is that with information, you can make better decisions. And the government also are kind of, I suppose, opening up and trying to provide a lot of data in order to, again, allow people to make better decisions. So that, starts with the likes of the government bodies like the Central Statistics Office or the CSO. They do their census every couple of years, and they are gathering an awful lot of information from their surveys of different households, and then they publish that information for people to make decisions. So the old way of looking at data which literally is to, literally open up and have a look at the data, and then I suppose, make decisions on the profile of the data that you had there. Now that is kind of available more electronically, and you can now build programs to interrogate that data in order to get greater insights quicker without as much effort. So the actual effort in order to crunch data is less and less. So in time when more data is made available, and more programs are made to crunch that data and to try and extract value from that, that essentially is the future. We're only at the very, very beginning of that, I think. There's more data kind of, I suppose, created in terms of digital data online in the last 2 years than there was in the previous 100 years, in terms of just the volumes of data, the volumes of video that has been produced. And again, I suppose that's being stored, the value, they say data is the new oil. So in terms of, it's being stored, and you need to figure out how you're going to mine it, and the mining of it is only part of it, but actually using it then is the difficult and the challenge in regards to not have it just sitting there. It needs to be extracted and needs to be refined, curated, and then the business kind of value extracted from it, and that takes time as well. So there's no easy shortcuts.
Am I right in saying, in kind of pretty simple terms, that the more information we have, the better chance we have to use that information and use it correctly, so therefore we can make kind of a better future for everybody, if you understand?
I think definitely in regards to, the more data you have, but the more data that is kind of structured well is even better. So you might have a lot of data, but you might have a lot of kind of fat in terms of it may be taking up a lot of space, and unless you're actually, you need to, when you're collecting data, you just don't collect mindless data. You try and actually come up with saying, well, if I need to make a decision on this, what is the data that I would like to collect in order to, kind of figure out, and then, then you can actually maybe go closer to getting a solution that'll add value.
Mm.
Ian, do you want to come in there on that?
Yeah, open data wouldn't be a big part of what we do at Dataships. I suppose the main source that we'd use directly would be the DPO. Obviously, it's a government agency. They're in charge of making sure everyone's obeying the laws, and if they're not, they're going to be getting fined. So we keep a close eye on what the commissioner is doing, everything from how well funded they are. So, for example, the funding 2 years ago was just short of 2 million. It's now increased to 20 million. So there's more people on the ground, keeping an eye on everything from privacy policies, cookies policies, how data is being transferred, and fines being handed out. So that would be the main source that we'd use and kind of keep an eye on.
Mm. Kenneth, I would imagine that what you do and the service that you offer, in conjunction with what John is saying there, I mean, certainly there must be huge cross-pollination in terms of information, and as we say, using that information correctly.
Yeah, I think just to add to John and Ian's point, every company has big data flowing through it, and it's how you organize that information to best put your best foot forward and how you perform. I think you've got big data in sport, you've got big data with analytics through how a player is performing, that how he can tailor his performance and analyzing that information to tailor his training and what he needs to do to improve on. And I think we're still learning. We're still at a very infancy stage in where we're at with the likes of the Google Analytics, where we're drilling into the behavior of our own users in the platform, and it's the categorization of that and what information, what key performance indicators do I need to look at so that we can achieve what our end goal is given more transparency into an industry that for years has been fragmented. So what other open data sources, if we want to open up into a newer market, do we want to look at? And it's making sure, I think, that you're set up now to be able to deal with the information, because it's only going to get more and more enhanced and open. So yeah, I think looking at the likes of Data Studio would be good places for people to start. Google Analytics, plugging in where the information is flowing into, and making sure your ducks are in a row so that you can drill into, right, if the platform or product wants to get better, what are the best pieces and best features in the platform to date that people are using that we can go into more detail on. So I think that's where we're looking at, and we're really drilling in and spending a lot of time on that now.
I heard there yesterday actually that Caesar Palace went into some sort of administration, and on their balance sheet, the value of all the data that they've collected was valued more than the assets of the building and the business. So it's phenomenal in terms of just how much value that they are now attributing to all the data that they've acquired over the last number of years.
It appears to me from the outside looking in, John, we're sort of at the start of a journey here. We can see where it can take us. I mean, that's kind of pretty exciting, to be fair, as you say. I mean, it must be a huge area with huge potential for growth.
Yeah, I think when you mix in the likes of what's coming down the track in terms of AI or artificial intelligence, software writing itself, seeing a goal, given a goal, and then going about actually looking at the data to figure out how I'm going to achieve that, and have that literally automated in how it goes about that is I suppose the tomorrow's world vision of just where things are going, and the fear then is how much control or autonomy do you lose when such things are automated.
How does privacy play an issue in this and where we go, in terms of the future? And
well,
I think the key with open data is it's got to be accessible for everyone. You know, there can be no kind of discrimination with who can get their hands on it. And as John said, it's very important that it's in kind of machine readable format. If it's not, then there's no real value in it if you can't actually access what's within the documents.
John, did you want to come in there again?
Yeah, I guess the latest breach over they were talking about with Facebook is in terms of kind of somebody uploaded kind of hundreds of thousands or if not millions of people's records, where they lived in terms of the location, and that was kind of a big wake up, and I think there's an investigation we kicked off against that. So that could have been curated over a long period from kind of online. Now I think they've patched the vulnerability, but it just opens up just how private data is also kind of mixing in with kind of stuff that is published. Now that's not open data; that would be governed under personal data. But it just kind of, I suppose, the barriers or the kind of the worries people have of being exposed, and then how that could be used against them if it was used by somebody. Now, hopefully, most people will use it ethically, but there will be people who don't, and it's, I suppose that's why they need to defend and come in with defences against personal data being used incorrectly.
Kenneth, I know that information is king in terms of what you try to do and how that information is used. And we've discussed even the last day how you can help people grow and develop their companies in terms of the what you offer.
Yeah, I think it's transparency. Transparency is key, and we're talking about the data being the oil, but you can have the oil and not have the engine that's behind it. You can, if you don't have the engine and the software, as John said, behind the information that's flowing in, you've nothing. And it's the confidence security that regulators and the government put in place that will allow people to ethically, work in the correct manner. I think in our play with the property information, it's, we don't want to be going. I think there will be down the line. You're already seeing it. Virtual tours. Leading huge. You're looking at personal data and personal information. You're opening people's houses, whereby there's family photos on the wall, and you're putting that online. And how that's used again. I'd say there will be Matterport will have, they'll have some down the line. I do see them having issues with opening up too much personal information, and it's how do you clamp down on that? It's how do you clamp down on we're internal imagery. There will be regulation, and I think we're at a very early stage of the journey. But it's getting the engine in place to deal with the information that's going to come through, because it's only going to get more and more open. If you look at America, what your next door neighbor owes on his mortgage. What they have inside their house. There's technology now where you can, over in the States, you can point your phone up at a building and it tells you everything about it. I think VR, on top of machine learning and artificial intelligence, is going to make, a really interesting, 5 to 10 years for a lot of industries. But it's having the systems in place to be able to deal with the data. John, I know you could go on that point.
Yeah, I suppose it is there's a big difference between the US and Ireland in terms of the what they have available over there. In ways, in regards when you go on and you search for something online and all of a sudden that ad is following you around. Well, I suppose that could be even worse in terms of that. I don't know whether you've been ever used the likes of the Amazon or Siri, that all of a sudden things that you've been talking about around your phone already start popping up in advertising, and you think, hold on a second, is that because they've analyzed what what was said and then started producing ads in front of me, or what was the intel? Was it done or on purpose, or was it pure accident that ad appeared? So the jury's out on that, because you've no proof of it happens, but everybody suspects. But yeah, there is certainly a big divide between or kind of a crossover between GDPR, you know, kind of everybody's privacy and then data in general, and it's being used for the good purposes rather than influencing you either to vote a certain way or to do a certain thing which you not necessarily would do, and whether that was for your benefit. So the ethics of, you know, how people are doing marketing, how they influence you, that is also kind of, I suppose, everybody's worried that they will be influenced in a negative way. How do you legislate for that? And by the time you've legislated for that, everything has moved on to something else. So, you know, you're always paying catch up, I think, as well. So there's big difficulties there in terms of everybody's kind of, I suppose, even if you're tech savvy or not, I suppose it is a new kind of challenge everybody's going to have to, I suppose, navigate.
With that, John, like obviously open data, as you said, it's still very much in its infancy, and in a way GDPR is, and you know, can you see further down the line that like individuals will actually go on and check a company's privacy policy and then decide, you know what, I actually don't want to do business with these guys. What they're doing isn't particularly, you know, ethical as such.
Yeah, I think it would be a lot easier for somebody to you know, kind of remove, you know, or kind of request that they are removed from their system, like the right to deletion. The chances of them actually reading down through all the terms and conditions, I think, is less likely. That if they suspect that they are being their information is being used incorrectly, they, you know, they would probably, you know, go for the easier option, which is to request either to should be shown what is held on them, or actually ask them to, you know, delete anything that is, you know, that they don't have, you know, they shouldn't have on their file. So yeah, it's, I suppose, the idea of that whole request and people asserting their rights more and more. I guess it's going to be interesting now to see how people do, you know, assert their rights on that.
In terms of, you know, compliance, maybe this is your gig here, Ian, in terms of compliance and how we legislate for people so that their rights are protected and that the information that you have isn't abused, or whichever one of you want to come in on that there. I mean, it's, you know, I don't know if you've watched CSI or NCIS on the television, but everything is resolved in the space of 50 minutes, and a lot of it is because of data they've gathered on people who've been through the system for long periods of time.
Yeah, a big part of what we do, you know, as John touched on there, is, you know, for whatever reason, if the customer is, you know, either unhappy with the service they were being given, or maybe they've decided to move on to someone else, or it could be as simple as someone's got married and they've had a name change. So within that, you've got different requests, and you know, the user has different rights. So like they've the right for their data to be erased, they've the right to access their data, and they've the right to receive their data in, you know, machine readable format. So you know, with our privacy center, within that, you've got, you know, the standard stuff like privacy policy, cookies tool. The interesting part that we've included is we've automated the data access request, and the way we do that, we've built API keys with applications that a company would have, and if someone then puts in a data access request, we can pull all their data out, you know, immediately, and put it into machine readable format and send it to them. So it could be that you know, you're using MailChimp, Stripe, and HubSpot, and for a company to have to, you know, send internal emails and go, oh, Joe Blogs has put in a data access request. Can you all check your emails to see what's come through? And what we found is, you know, big businesses, they don't have the time, and a lot of the time it's senior management who could end up having to spend 15, 20 minutes, half an hour checking to see what data they hold on this individual. And it can be, you know, very disruptive on something that's not going to be, you know, productive for them at all. It's not going to be making you any money. It's just going to be wasting your time. So that's, I suppose, the special add-on that our service provides is, you know, when the data access request comes in, it's seamless, it saves time, And it also builds trust with customers, because there is a long period of time. I think it's a month you have to send back a data access request. But if you're sending that back instantly, you're going to build trust with that customer, and they're more likely to continue doing business with you.
How do we ensure that we don't paralyze ourselves in terms of trying to move forward by just overanalyzing information and data that we get?
You want to take that one, Kenneth?
Yeah, it's a great question. We put procedures in place that are set. You partner with the likes of Dataships, or you get your privacy policy in place. But then, going through your settings, as simple as going through your settings on your phone, or going through the settings on the apps you download, for a really use case scenario of what are you being tracked? What information are you giving out? 9 times out of 10, you're giving out the information because they've put a default setting on an application, and you haven't gone in and spent the time to disable it. I'm a victim of that myself. Making sure your webcams are off. Making sure that you're not giving everyone access to information that's private to yourself. But in terms of from a business perspective, definitely having privacy policies in place, having your anyone who's opting into emails, make sure that there's an opt-out button at every email. You can put it in fine grey print, but once it exists, happy days. You have to play fair in it. And if someone comes back saying, unsubscribe me, unsubscribe them. And deal with it in a professional manner. I see more and more of it, week in, week out. There will be people who, want to be marketed to in a specific way, and you have to respect that. You can't, leave them on a mailing list and continue to mail them, because you will be slapped with a bill. We've seen it ourselves, and that's why we partnered up with the likes of Dataships, because I see this, 3-4 years down the line, companies who don't have these in play will be hit, and the fines are only going to increase.
John, how do we ensure that people use this information correctly and don't abuse it? I mean, do we have to, I know it's a learning process for everybody, but just from a governmental policy point of view, do we just have to work going forward to legislate for this?
So getting people to use, well, the first thing is in regards, if you're holding any private data on somebody, and any data you collect or you get in, you have to determine, is anybody specifically identifiable from that data? And if it is, now you're into the GDPR kind of compliance side of things. In which case, then you have to make sure that, I suppose, when you're processing it, that, kind of, so where did you get it? And then, if did they give you the right to use this? You know what I mean? So you have to kind of the provenance of the data in regards that you are holding now. You have to say that you have the right now to have this data. You can't just hold stuff just because you got it doesn't mean you have the right to have it. And you're responsible now that you've ingested it into your platforms, that you now are responsible for that. So it starts with kind of your client data and making sure that people don't get access to that in regards to obligations and security, making sure that your client list doesn't get shared out. So whether it be training your staff not to click on anything in terms of what they call fizzing in regards and exposing your computers to somebody getting in and getting data from you, or it could be God forbid you click on the link which is ransomware, where they demand 5,000, 50,000 for unlock your computer. And you're sending money into the internet, and you don't know whether they're going to unlock it, even if you did, because they're looking for Bitcoin. So you want to be holding your breath if you want to send money that way. So data, the stuff that they're doing in terms of making you aware of the value of personal data is not only value other people's private data, value your clients' private data, and making sure that security is in place to protect both you and your clients on that. So it's a big subject. It's and wide in terms of its reach.
And in terms of procedures on that, like private networks, do you want to touch on simple procedures people could maybe put in place to stop people breaching into their information?
Look, I mean, it's the basic stuff in terms of virus checkers, malware, preventing kind of people putting malware on your computer. But the weakest link is always people. You know what I mean? The most robberies come from people who don't lock their cars. You know, most people who get robbed, you know, are people that don't have alarms. You know, because they're testing to see, well, what is the lowest hanging fruit that I can, you know, pick and you know, get in and out of that. You know, so yeah, it's the same in computers in regards that, you know, if you leave yourself vulnerable, you'll be the person. I think a friend of mine who's kind of in the States, it was described as, if you're running from a bear, you don't have to be the first person. You just make sure you're not the last. In terms of the budget that you need to spend on securing, you know, kind of making sure you're not the one that gets targeted.
Depends on the bear, I suppose, really, doesn't it?
I mean, you can test that one.
No, I won't. Thanks all the same. But I mean, vigilance is a key word here, isn't it? You know, I mean, we've got to. I think people are still a bit lax in terms of everything. Whether it's just leaving your mobile phone down and wandering off somewhere and coming back thinking, gee, what did I do with that? Or leaving it unlocked, even a simple thing like that.
Yeah, there's basic stuff as well. Like, as John touched on there, it is a lot of the data breaches come from human error. You know, there's one that we see all the time is people sending out, you know, a group email to 100 people, and they CC everyone in. So like everyone who's receiving the email can see everyone else's email address. It doesn't sound like much, but, you know, someone can go off and compile lists and then target those people. And it's something that I don't think people would have been concerned about, you know, certainly not 10 years ago. Whereas if that happens now, you're going to get complaints into your business very, very quickly. And you're going to get people who are very disgruntled about it. You know, another one that we also see is it's a basic one, but passwords. You know, people using the same password, you know, across the board, and you know, inevitably, companies get breached. So, like, for example, Fastway got breached recently. So that off the back of that, everyone who had their password with them was told to change it. And like, a lot of people have the same password for 100 different sites, and you know, they'll get that notification. Are they acting on that notification, or are they just leaving as it is? You know, when you have the option of putting in a hard password to correct, you know, to crack, or are you staying with Michael 1946 as your password? That someone can probably work out that you're that wasn't aimed at you, Michael, by the way. But
I was wondering, yeah, God, there's obviously a problem with your eyesight with those fancy glasses.
We've the new updated young photo up for us. So I had to bring that up.
Yeah. There's the website Have You Been Pawned, and it actually has a plugin for anybody using like the likes of Chrome, and it'll tell you this password has been, you know, is on a list of passwords that have been breached. So you know, so you need to, at least you're aware that, you know that your password is known on some list, and it's time to change it maybe.
I know I came across somebody recently who has an issue, maybe it's an age thing, an issue in terms of trying to remember stuff. So on their diary, on the last back page of their diary, they had written down all of the things they need to log into, and next to it was their password. And I just casually said to the person, geez, so what's the story with this? And they went, oh no, I change it every so often, and that's why I use Tipex to write it out and put in the new password. And I said, sure, that defeats the whole purpose of your privacy, doesn't it, to be fair about it? And the whole thing is open to being abused on, isn't it? That wasn't me, by the way, sorry.
Of course not. I always told in the third person.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It was just a friend of mine. Yeah. Kenneth, is there something? Is there another subject you need to cover, or
no? I think we
have a chat with
we lashed into the rugby. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Well, as we always do, we thank Ian for joining us because we know you're not an expert on what we're going to discuss next. That's rugby. So you can take the rest of the afternoon off. Listen, the big news, I guess, from a rugby point of view this week has been, or will be, the return of Simon Zebo next season. Obviously signing up for Munster, Ian, for a 12-month period from next season. You know what that's like yourself in terms of, you know, Bordeaux to England to play with Ulster. So you must be excited for him, are you?
Yeah, absolutely. As he said himself, the king is back. But look, it's The King of Cork. But look, it's a great story. It's one that's really put smiles on people's faces this week. I think, you know, Zebo's personality, his style of play, the enjoyment he shows when he's playing, he just really endears himself to supporters, and you know, fellow players are no different. You know, the Ulster lads are buzzing that he was going to be coming back as well, and I think it's a very smart piece of business, because he's a guy who will put bums on seats. You know, I don't know what they're paying him, but it wouldn't be unthinkable that season ticket holders could go up by 1,000 or 2,000 off the back of him coming back. He sells jerseys, you know. So aside from what he's doing on the rugby pitch, which I'm sure is the primary reason he's come back, and he's been playing really well in Racing. You know, it is slightly different for him in France. There's a big squad there. He's kind of in rotation, which is the reality with a lot of their squad. They don't play every week. But when he has played, he's played really well, and we've seen that in Europe. It's been frustrating on this end that we haven't been able to watch the top 14 because no one has the TV rights here. But I from what he's told me, he said he's been playing very well, very consistently.
Yeah, that's just the modest side of him. Do you think Conor Murray will be delighted to see him coming back, because it means he'll be able to pass the ball more rather than kick it?
Oh, I'd say Conor is absolutely delighted. You know, the two of them are best of friends, and I'm sure if there's anyone who can convince Conor not to keep box kicking it away, it will be Zeeves.
Before we talk about Europe, I mean, this weekend there's a massive game altogether for the Irish women's team. I was talking to Adam Griggs just an hour or so ago before he came on this call. You know, they played Wales last week, hadn't played for over 12 months. Terrific performance by Ireland, but it's a massive step up, isn't it, against France this coming Saturday?
Yeah, it really was a great performance, and you know, I've got to know Emer Considine well over the last 12 months doing the podcast and House of Rugby with her, and I can see firsthand that, you know, the hard work that the women put in. Like, I can't describe how tough it is for them working, you know, full-time jobs and then having to do all the training. And it is high-end training that they're doing, and they've, you know, got to fit in their gym sessions at, you know, 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning. And you know, for her, it's teaching her class for the day, and then she's got to then do like a running session in the evening, and then her weekends could be completely consumed with a camp in the HPC in Dublin. And, you know, they're just action-packed weeks, but the body of work that they've put together over the last 12 months has really stood to them. I thought they looked really fit and really slick. You know, the passing was really good. Their pack got dominance. And I definitely think the gap between Ireland and France and England will have closed up in the last 12 months, because they've been in that professional setup. And, you know, Adam Griggs will have been really able to tie in how he wants that team to play. And I think this weekend is going to be a great test. You know, the French women's team are really good. There's a very competitive league over there. They'd have a much bigger playing pool than we'd have in Ireland. So it's going to be a real test.
And just mentioning, I mean, you've mentioned Emer Considine, but you look at people like Claire Malloy, you know, who qualified as a doctor and worked and still works as a doctor, obviously. You know, she's based in the UK. Lauren Delaney works with Leeds Rhinos as a nutritionist there. I mean, they're trying to put not just their day job in, but their day job outside the country and then come back and play. I mean, it's incredible multitasking, isn't it, in fairness to them?
Yeah, it's been really tough on the Irish players that are based in England, and not having been able to travel back for the camps, you know, the same way that professional players would have been able to travel back. And that's been very disruptive for the girls that have been training here, because, you know, you need 15v15 in training to get good quality training sessions, get the competitiveness going. And because, you know, 6, 7, 8 of the girls are based in England, haven't been able to come back, they weren't able to get that for a period of time. So having that now throughout the Six Nations is going to be huge for them.
How are you feeling about Europe? I mean, if you look at the Challenge Cup first, I mean, you know, terrific victory last time out. Leicester at Walford Road. I mean, it's a real, I don't know, about you, but to me it's one of the great grounds in not just English rugby, but indeed European rugby. Short pitch, which obviously helps fellas like you when you're kicking. Because I had it. There's a very funny story actually about there a couple of years back when Munster played Leicester and Rog was playing another confident man when Rog was playing for Munster, and he kicked a penalty from about 3 yards inside his own half of the pitch to win the match for Munster, and I was doing the match on the radio at the time and the whole thing, whatever, and he said to me, my old man told me that you were saying that it wasn't even 50 meters because the pitch was too short, and banged the whole thing, and he was going, it was nearly 60, that kind of thing. I don't know how you feel, but it's Leicester away. I mean, I think it's a fantastic ground, to be fair.
Yeah, I had the joy of kicking in Ashton Gate, which is very much a soccer pitch in Bristol, and that was a kick from the middle of the pitch. There was only about 45 meters, but I didn't tell that to anyone until I left. But yeah, no, it's going to be a great game. There's no doubt Leicester over the last 4 or 5 years haven't been the strength and force that we've come accustomed to at Leicester. They would have always been up there with Toulouse, Munster, Leinster, Clermont, and the reality is they've fallen short of that the last 2 or 3 seasons. But there's no doubt there's a rebuild going on there, and we're beginning to see the fruits of that now. They've a very good coach in Borthwick, and they've made some really good signings, and you can see now that they're really gelling as a team, and they're going to have international guys coming back, the likes of Ford, Youngs, who are going to be kind of touch and go for line selection, and they'll know that they're going to have to be at their very best in the Challenge Cup, and nothing better than for them to go on and beat Ulster and win the Challenge Cup, to put their hands up for selection there. So it's going to be a real challenge for us, but we've had an away game at Harlequins now, albeit against a greatly reduced Harlequin side. But the game against Northampton was a good test. They're a good side, and they play a very attritional brand similar to Leicester. And I think that being in a tight game against them is going to really stand to us going over to Welford Road.
And who would you like to play in the final, Bath or Montpellier?
I think the final's in France, isn't it? So probably.
No, it's not set yet. No, it'll be.
Okay.
No, there were talks of those finals taking place in Marseille, but because of the pandemic, Marseille is now being pushed on to next year again, basically. So I think they're going to wait and see who's in the finals first.
I think there's pros and cons to both, and the Ulster have come up against Bath, as recently as last season, playing them home and away in the Heineken Cup. So they're a side that we know reasonably well. Montpellier are a side that we haven't played against, I don't think, in the last 3 or 4 years. So that will pose as challenges. The Montpellier pack are very physical. So yeah, look, we'll focus on getting past Leicester first, and then crunch into hopefully what will be a final, and the first trophy for Ulster for a very long time, which is very exciting.
I've only 3 more questions for you. The first one is in relation to the Champions Cup semi-finals. We'll deal with the Leinster game in a second, but your old club, Bordeaux-Bègles, up against Toulouse in Toulouse. It's an entirely different prospect, isn't it?
Yeah, Bordeaux at home are very hard to beat, and their pitch is a quite unusual surface. It's kind of a spongy kind of surface that catches a lot of teams out. Toulouse are still playing very well. I thought they were very impressive. They were the better side against Clermont away. I think for them moving back home, I just think with their experience and their class, they're going to have a bit too much for Bordeaux. But it's going to be close. Like, Bordeaux are a very good side. We saw that against Racing, and the week before they beat a good Bristol side, and their eyes will very much be on the prize, and they'll think that they can go down to Toulouse and win. They've won there, I think twice over the last 3 or 4 years. So it's not a fixture that they'll be scared of.
Leinster, fantastic performance last week against Exeter, gifting them the 14 points in the first 9 minutes of the match, coming back to win it. The manner in which they won it, I thought was one of the great team performances. A lot of people writing off La Rochelle, but La Rochelle, irrespective of who's coaching them, are a very, very good team and don't give up a lot of matches at home.
Yeah, they're arguably the form team in the competition. You know, I think Sale put 50 on Scarlets, and then La Rochelle go and put 40 on Sale. So, you know, where does that leave Scarlets? Not in a great spot, but they went about that performance, you know, really clinically the same way they did against Gloucester the week before. They have a really strong pack, and, you know, lots been said about, you know, Roger's interview after the Gloucester game. He was talking about, you know, keeping the ball alive. They do that, but they do it in a really clever way. They move the point of contact really slickly, some great passes to the ball in that back line. And then once they get the ball to the right guy, whether it's a forward or a back, he's, you know, so explosive, got such good footwork. And then there's just a stream of guys coming in behind him ready for an offload. So what's difficult with that is you can feel like you're defending really well, and one guy gets a soft shoulder, an offload, and they're in behind you, and there's 2 or 3 of them running at your fullback, and you've gone from defending them well on your halfway line to, you know, standing back in behind the post and having, you know, received 7 points. So it's going to be probably Leinster's biggest challenge defensively. I think, you know, they would have prepared really well for the Exeter game, and Exeter, you know, in a large part would have produced what Leinster would have expected. And, you know, they struggled initially in the game. Once they got to grips with it, they contained the Exeter side really well. What they're going to see in La Rochelle is going to be very different and very movable. I think at times La Rochelle don't even know what they're going to do themselves. You know, there's that much talent there.
And a final question for you. Who's your pick for Lions captain?
I'm a big Alan Wynne-Jones fan. I hope, the purist in me, I hope he goes, and I hope he's captain. I think he deserves it off the back of the Six Nations. He's playing arguably the best rugby he's played in his career. So, you know, he's done it before. Why not pick him again?
I think he's the best placed person to be the captain.
Yeah. No, I'd agree with that. Yeah, it's hard. It's like, who would you pick outside of him? You know, well,
people, I think during the course of the Six Nations said maybe Maro Itoje, but I just think, I think he's a very good player, but I just think he's a bit divisive. Like, you know, I mean, there's some people like him, other people don't, kind of thing. It's just his personality type thing, and I just think Alan Wynne-Jones, as I describe him, as a leader of men, and I think he just brings people along with him, and he's got a fantastic, engaging personality. Certainly, that's my experience of dealing with him, I have to say.
Yeah, I think, like, obviously the two other options, like you've Hogg there, I wouldn't be mad on having full back as your captain.
Right.
I think even now, like, we've seen that there's new rules coming into the Pro 14, and with the captain's challenge, I think it's even more of a reason not to have your full back or a winger as captain. You know, in fairness to Johnny, I thought Johnny outplayed anyone who he came up against in the Six Nations. He led the side really well. If he's the guy who they're planning on going with, then, you know, why not pick him as captain?
Yeah, I think it could be maybe Alan Wynne-Jones or Johnny Sexton, but then again, perhaps we're biased. We'll tease that out some other time. Thanks for that, Kenneth.
Yeah, thanks, gents, all for joining this week. We're going to be going again next week, making it a sort of a weekly series. There was a lot of registering, so thanks everyone for registering. You'll get a recording of today's. John, Ian, Michael, enjoy your evening, and thanks again for jumping on.
Thanks a million for having me on, Kenneth.
Thanks, John. Thanks, lads. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.